What's News project. Our topic was international politics and the effects it has on globalization. And the specific topic we chose inside that broader topic was North Korean dictator Kim Jong un's recent trip to Russia. We are Team 6 or Team Omada, which was the name we chose for our group. The members in this group include Chris Walder, Jonathan Colon, Laura Whitty, and Gino Vlacic. As I said in the last slide, we chose to discuss Kim Jong un's recent trip from his homeland of North Korea to Russia, the significance of this trip, and what it means for the rest of the world, as well as what was suspected to have happened during this meeting between the two countries' leaders. I say suspected because both countries tried to keep it quiet, as they normally tend to do with their national and international matters. But some details did emerge, and from what we know, that's what these articles discussed. Like I said previously, we chose two articles that discussed the trip from Kim Jong un to Russia to meet with Russian leader Vladimir Putin. The articles discussed his mode of transport at the beginning, which may differ from normal leaders, as he chose to take a bulletproof train, instead of flying or taking a plane. They also discussed the reason for the visit, which is suspected to be the sales of weapons from North Korea's capital of Pyongyang to Russia's capital of Moscow. This was the first time Kim Jong un has left North Korea in over 4 years, which makes the event that much more significant, because it's the first time since COVID he's been out, and just so happens he went to Russia. Then it is also believed that the sale of these weapons and the meeting is an effort to help replenish Russian supplies for their war against Ukraine, which obviously has implications on the entire world, not just those three countries, especially the two that we're discussing. The details of the articles will be further discussed in the following slides.
The group was interested in this topic for a number of different reasons, but we can start with the sheer shock value and seriousness it carries, because North Korea is famously a very isolated country. Citizens escaping is very rare, and when they do, it becomes pretty big news. So, in that regard, anything regarding the leader of North Korea, and especially right now when it includes Vladimir Putin, it definitely piques our interest. And another reason is the implications that a strengthening relationship between Russia and North Korea can have on both the United States and the rest of the Western civilizations that we see all over the world. Russia right now is involved in a war with Ukraine, where they essentially invaded, and anything that involves Putin right now is also gaining lots and lots of interest. So, this is what really piqued our interest into this topic. Furthermore, when we look at the tensions between the United States and, let's say, Russia, North Korea, China, Saudi Arabia at times, a North Korean and Russian partnership or alliance or bettering relations can have adverse effects on other key countries across the globe. As we saw earlier in this year, there was speculations and rumors that Saudi Arabia and Russia were both looking to no longer trade oil or settle oil on the dollar and switch to both the yen and rubles. Now, when we look further and summary of the BBC article, we see that we're discussing Kim Jong un's traveling habits, how he is following tradition, and kind of with the little niche things that stand out about him. So, in regards to his train, he normally takes an armored bulletproof train that is notably slower than others due to all the armor it has, as well as a lot of other things on board, such as live entertainment. People such as Konstantin Pulikovsky have described how it has some of the finest delicacies from all over the world. Chefs, any dish that's Russian, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, or French can be made. They have live lobsters on board. They import wine from Bordeaux and Burgundy, France. And he even went as far as to describe it as better than Putin's ship or train at the time. So when you consider all of these things, as well as the live entertainment that they claimed is on board, that can go into how it is a very slow moving train compared to other trains in Japan and even Europe. And when you get past the train, he also travels by private jet and plane sometimes, both of which are Russian made. So it seems like they have a very strong relationship. Furthermore, he has a $1.8 million Mercedes S Class, as well as he's been spotted on a mystery yacht valued at about $7 million, which is highly speculated to be his. And this article primarily discusses all of his methods of transportations, the history involved in it. Going back to the train, his grandfather had actually started that. He's essentially following that tradition.
The Wall Street Journal article we chose discussed how the North Korean Supreme Leader Kim Jong un had recently traveled to Russia to meet with the President Vladimir Putin. This meeting was initially unknown to the public. Even the North Korean state media was vague on the information provided, with the only statement made being Kim will meet and have a talk with Comrade Putin. The goal of this meeting between the two international leaders is assumed to be the discussion of munition sales between the capital city of North Korea, Pyongyang, and the Russian capital of Moscow, attempting to replenish Russia's supplies for the war with Ukraine. Aside from the summit, a large aspect of the article focused on how Kim Jong un had traveled out of North Korea, as this was the most recent expedition since the COVID-19 epidemic back in 2019, when North Korea had initially cut off much interaction with other countries. The trip that Kim Jong un had conducted from the capital, Pyongyang, was conducted through the use of his bulletproof train, which was spotted and photographed on the border between North Korea and Russia. It was stated that the train has the leader's private vehicle attached in case there is a need for a quick escape. When comparing the articles, it's important to note some differences among them. With the BBC article, much of it discusses the various forms of travel that North Korean leaders have used in the past, such as private planes, luxury cars, yachts, and most often trains. With the Wall Street Journal article, it heavily discusses the implications of the meeting at the summit, as well as the weapons deal between the two countries. There were some details about the bulletproof train, but much of it was vague in nature. When discussing what the two articles have in common, oddly enough, not much of it was based on the summit, which presents a more current real-day problem. The main overlapping points between the two articles is the bulletproof train itself, discussing its special features such as helicopter access, layered steel plating, access to fresh lobsters surprisingly, and the car attachment, which, as stated earlier, will be used for quick escapes if necessary. Another interesting aspect of both articles is the coverage of how previous North Korean supreme leaders prefer to travel internationally. Both Kim Jong-il, pictured at the top left, the father Kim Jong-un, and Kim Il-sung, pictured at the bottom right, the founder of North Korea, have gone on record saying how they feel the railway is the safest and preferred form of travel.
The Wall Street Journal connects to Chapter 3, Cross-Cultural Business. It covers how Kim Jong-un traveled by rail in an armored train. It points out how this is not only for protection, but gains global recognition as well due to the differentiation of this mode of travel compared to other leaders' preferences. This journal also relates to Chapter 8, Foreign Direct Investment. Foreign direct investment declines during economical crisis and suffered a severe setback after COVID-19. This was Kim Jong-un's first time traveling internationally in over 4 years, which is a big deal for his country and the one he traveled to. The purpose of this travel was to talk about the sale of Pyongyang's munitions to help Moscow replenish supplies for war in Ukraine, which is creating connections and strength between the two countries. The BBC article relates to Chapter 3, Cross-Cultural Business as well. This chapter covered cultural traditions, and the article mentioned the offering of bread and salt upon Kim Jong-un's previous arrival to visiting Putin. Another tradition that was brought up in this article was the reason Kim Jong-un travels by train often. Kim Il-sung, which is his grandfather, started the tradition that has been passed on through the generations. This also goes to show how social status and social structure changes in different countries and how a process or a greeting plays out. There are also some political risks covered in this article that can relate to Chapter 5. Although Kim Jong-un is traveling to assist to provide help to another country, there are still many precautions that need to be taken and monitored for the safety of Kim and those traveling with him. One of the key takeaways from reading these articles was understanding how complex international travel for leaders is and reading about many of the aspects that go into it. Another takeaway was the lasting effects of an economic crisis, such as COVID-19, and how it put such a pause onto international communication and business. We were also able to read about real-time traditions and cultural practices of other countries and leaders within them. The final takeaway was regarding the international relations between Russia and North Korea and the tighter relations they are creating while working together. North Korea is opening itself up more to the outside world again and starting to do business as usual pre-pandemic.